behind on some Aninews content, but this is the cut content for episode 11, how the S-Rank Massacre on Jeju Island really went from Aninews. Let's get it.
I guess Solo Leveling really knows what the fans want. What could have been an emotional scene highlighting what's at stake and the diminishing faith Korea has in its hunters was instead a Sakuga-filled anime original scene of Cha fighting the Ant Queen.
Woo!
Both would have been pretty awesome, but you know as much as I do, one appeals more to the mainstream than the other.
Yeah, because, you know, people want more. There's more mainstream people, right? You need to chase the numbers. You need to see who is... What am I trying to say? Do you think that there's more kids who want Unga Bunga shit? Or do you think there's more mature people who want, like, more in-depth story stuff? I think it's so easy.
That being the case, allow me to build up that tension and set the tone for you, since a lot of the little scenes which do exactly that were left out. We'll also go through how it is the raid really went down, since there's a bit more to be said from both the Korean and Japanese side.
Okay.
So, just as we do every week, here's everything that didn't make it into the anime.
Let's go!
All the extra details to make your solo leveling experience a more complete one.
But first, before we get started, merch drop!
Now, if you want some high quality streetwear to make your wardrobe more complete, there's only a few days left to secure the—
I swear this motherfucker been saying this shit every week! 2 weeks ago he said this! Listen. You want to sell your merch, go for it. But last video too, last week, you said there's only a couple days left. It's been a couple days!
The new designs we cooked up. We're closing the store for good on Monday, so if you were in—
Alright, it's for good on Monday now, alright? So, surely, when we watch this video today, later on, the next one, he won't have the same... I'll be keeping an eye on that. Let's see if they actually have the same one or not. Alright, bet.
Interested in any of these subtle nods to solo leveling, be Shadow Army. It's going to get even more intense, covering chapters 96 to 100 from the manhwa and chapters 115 to 118 from the web novel.
Okay.
Let's start things off at the beginning of Raid Day, where numerous warships would be deployed all from the coasts of China, Taiwan, Japan, and Korea. Despite half those countries not being involved, it seems others were preparing for the worst. Korea naturally had several contingencies in place too, part of which was the large number of hunters stationed to the south. They were ready for any ants that might have fled to the mainland. This is because, even in the case of a successful mission, there was a good chance at least a few ants would find their way there. So, with the number of hunters it required to take out just one, sending multiple strike squads south certainly wasn't overly precautious at all. Multiple other strike squads were stationed to defend national territory, each consisting of one being—
Just funny to me that, like, yeah, it's better than nothing, but imagine, like, you think this group is gonna be able to beat the ants? I just don't see it happening, right? No disrespect to, you know, Swordmaster here, but come on now, come on now.
Defend national territory.
It's better than nothing.
Consisting of one
better than
B rank
nothing
leader, 3 C ranks, then over 10 D and E ranks. They were groups comprised of both active and retired hunters.
Alright.
There were even those who awakened yet chose not to become hunters. All in all, it was a force totaling 5,000, so out of the 50,000 awakened that currently reside in Korea, that meant 1/10 of them showed up to defend their country. A lot of these volunteers are people like the cameraman, who's a good example of someone who awakened yet chose not to become a hunter.
Giga cameraman.
There are people who live a normal life due to raids.
Bro awakened as an A rank and said, nah, I'm good, I'ma chill.
It's just not being for them. For the main squad currently flying to Jeju Island, Guildmaster Ma was chosen as their leader. He was incredibly honored to be fighting alongside the people he was, because he knew he'd never be able to raid with such capable hunters again. It was while on the helicopter—
oh, he's doing this for the love of the game—
that Cha would ask Beck if he knew why Sung declined, a question to which he obviously said no.
Bro's too busy aura farming, he'll show up later.
When Beck then asked why it was she wanted to know, a rare flustered Cha would answer no reason in particular.
Ooh, slice of life rom-com moments missed out.
Shortly after is when the raid would commence, leading a small number of ants to attack the helicopter. Since not every ant was capable of flight, there were only 7 who had come out to meet them. The thing is, Choi's fire wasn't actually enough to kill them.
私はようこそ私のソウルソサエティbunker. No, my brain rot. That's the one. No. That meme I did actually like from Chin Leveling. Though. That's the one joke that I actually loved from it. Everything else was really forced and too brain rot. The Watashi no Soul Sentai. I love the Soul Society one though.
Yes, it was capable of burning away their wings, but the fact it couldn't one-shot them was a little
Thank you, Crix5, for the 1 month of subscribe. Oh, that's the first sub on Twitch. Our Kick so far. Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
concerning. It showed him that if he really wanted to incinerate them, then a lot more firepower was necessary. These evolved ants were no longer as easy to kill as they were in the last raid. It's then that Choi would jump into the ant tunnels first, clearing all nearby enemies with a massive AoE
aura.
burst upon landing. As if skydiving hands in pocket wasn't aura enough, Choi's one-liner after definitely was.
Watashi no Soul Society. Bunkai. Watashi no Soul Society.
enough. Choi's one-liner after definitely was. So if you didn't have an appreciation for Choi before, then these two panels together should change that.
Hype!
For the Japan squads who'd been fighting for about 10 minutes now, it was about time to initiate the next phase of their plan. The intended retreat which would send every single ant back into the tunnels. It was right as Goto was about to give the order, though, that Team C's lack of comms would prevent him.
They did.
There was a chance it was simply due to equipment failure, but considering the number of checks done to them beforehand, it was very unlikely that that was what was happening. So, because the order to retreat needed to be relayed to them too, Goto decided to make his way to them himself. If he didn't, proceeding with the plan would likely cause Team C to meet the same fate as the Korean hunters. It was a price Goto knew he couldn't afford, since when considering the subjugation operations that were to happen after this, Team C was far too important. Especially since, aside from Goto, they were composed of Japan's strongest.
Oh, so this was the strongest sub-squad within Japan, huh? And they got wiped out immediately, damn.
This is because Team C was positioned closest to the ant tunnel, so it made sense to ensure that they were the most stacked. That being the case, to lose them due to a fault of miscommunication, well, that was a cost which would hurt Japan greatly. Luckily, Goto and Team C had landed relatively close, so with his current speed he figured he could get to them in about 10 minutes. Switching back to the Korean team, for the time being they were relatively safe, with Choi's flame prison acting as a shield preventing the re-entry of ants B rank or lower. That meant they could venture deeper without the worry of being flanked from behind. It was a good application of a move typically used to tie up enemies. Inside, the tunnels were incredibly dark, creating for a dungeon experience that was fundamentally different. You see, where usually the insides of gates were lit up by illumination stones, no light here made it difficult to see.
We got shit, don't worry.
All they had was Choi's magic and the cameraman's flashlight.
Bunkai.
So, in addition to facing enemies who had evolved to see in the dark, they themselves could barely see anything. It was an added layer of difficulty that made things harder. Now, with Choi having no choice but to lead the group, it was Ma's job as leader and tank to stand right next to him. His normal outgoing behavior was nowhere to be seen, though.
We locked in now.
Every ounce of focus was spent observing their surroundings.
No more fucking around.
The
Serious
same could
mode.
be said for Beck as well, since ever since entering the tunnels, he hadn't said a word. He was now using his Eyes of the Beast to detect even the slightest changes of magical energy. The only hunter who remained the same way they always were was Cha with her typical calm, composed attitude. It was once they arrived at the egg chamber that the ants they fought here were simply the nursery guards. They were lesser evolved versions of the ants that were now the Queen's Guards.
Damn, they were weak ones though.
This brings us back to the Japanese side, where Goto would arrive at Team C's.
So like the ones that our S-Friend concepts were taking out were just easy ants, and we thought we were doing some shit.
Massacre. The novel didn't describe how said massacre happened, but when compared to the manhwa, the anime was a perfect execution of their executions. Now,
Good one, Aninews. Execution of executions.
You might be wondering how it is Kenzo got injured before this, but it was simply because the ants were more organized than he thought. By attacking with military tactics and flying in a battle formation, the intelligence they exhibited was far beyond what he was expecting.
They too smart.
It was another example highlighting the ants' crazy evolution. Now, it was in the novel that Team C actually had 5 S ranks, since the overall strike force was all 20 of Japan's S rank hunters.
Okay.
That being the case, the fact all 5 were killed regardless made their executions all the more worrying. Their bodies didn't indicate any sort of battle either, so where Goto's teammates assumed it was a fight involving multiple ants, Goto immediately knew it was one. The lack of ant corpses made such a conclusion clear.
Beru.
Their eaten heads also indicated the same cause of death, so when combining that with the fact that this was the work of only one monster, the conclusion Goto came to was that this had to have been done by the raid boss.
Beru head
He
eating.
would then call headquarters and ask for the location of the queen, wanting to confirm whether his suspicion was true or not. You see, with Japan being one of 3 countries possessing a satellite equipped with magic energy detection technologies,
What the fuck? They got satellites here?
it was very easy to pinpoint where exactly the queen was whenever they wanted.
Okay.
It was when
I guess that explains, you know, how this dude was just chilling, the vice captain, and he was just analyzing all these things. I never really questioned, like, how are they getting the data, but, like, okay, 1 of 3 to have satellite shit. Orihime 1. Tree diagram.
headquarters revealed the queen was still in the tunnels, that Goto would panic and order every Japanese hunter off the island immediately. Reason being that the annihilation of
Good
5 of
call.
their best hunters from one unknown enemy was far beyond any of their expectations. Yes, they did plan for all sorts of possibilities and variables, but whatever this was far past the scope of any of it. That's when Goto would remember something odd reported to him 4 months ago, involving the Ant Queen and a change in her power levels. Since she was being monitored 24/7, Japan was able to clearly see when its energy levels changed. That being the case, when a massive decline in her emissions was detected almost 4 months ago,
Stonk's going down.
Japan's best researchers deemed this the queen's lifespan coming to its end.
Why? Because giving birth is very taxing on the life force?
With its detected magical energy less than half of what it usually was, this was the only
Hey, by the way, I hate monkeys like this. Looks like you is dropping Toaru. Hey, retard. When was the last episode updated? Probably like a day or 2 ago, right? You are so fucking spoiled. 8 videos a fucking day goes on, and you only care about one thing. And I'm focusing on other shit because you don't even understand the other shit happening. And you only, and you're, did he drop Toaru? Guess what? Every person that shows up in unrelated videos and says, where's Toaru video? I ban you immediately on YouTube. And you probably are the exact same person that's begging for Toaru on YouTube that I've already banned on YouTube. So you know what? Thank you for showing yourself on Kick as well. So I can ban your retard ass here too. Goodbye. Holy shit. The level of delusion that exists in these monkeys is unreal. I don't give a fuck if you're subscribed to my Patreon, if you're subscribed to my Kick, whatever. The impatience that these retards have, the level of volume of content that I provide, it's unreal, bro. I go like 2 days without watching their specific show and they're like, did you drop it? Holy shit, it's so fucking annoying.
conclusion they could come to. 1 month was all it took for the queen's levels to return back to normal though, so with researchers now stumped with regards to what this was, Goto couldn't help but think perhaps that was related to this. So, it was as he wondered more about who this mysterious enemy was that the Korean team would be dealing with the remnants of guards before the boss room. Min had given buffs tailored to each of his party members,
Rest in peace.
so that gave a better idea of what each member's role was. Most did make sense given each member's known abilities, but some of you might be shocked to see Cha with more of a bruiser type buff.
Yeah.
Considering how she was the main tank for her own guild, it made sense to give her a boost in both offense and defense.
She's tanking in her
It's a
own
role
guild?
we'll see come more into play in the boss room.
Okay.
For any ants that did get past the front line right now, Min was more than capable of handling them himself. Yes, being a healer did mean his combat skills weren't the greatest, but when compared to other hunters, they were still at the A rank level. It was more than enough power to handle at least 1 or 2 ants.
I love his club.
5 minutes was all it took to handle the second wave of ants before the boss room, mostly because Cha's buff made her way more efficient.
Ass.
Where before she was slaying the same number of ants as everyone else, now she
Ass.
was killing double what Beck was. It gave the squad a lot more time to work with.
She's that
Since
different.
getting here took about 15 minutes from landing, that left about 30 minutes to kill the boss then evacuate. They needed to leave extra time to make it back to the point from which they entered from. It was once the team got close to the boss room that Beck would sense only 8 guards and the queen. There wasn't a whole army like how we saw in the anime, but rather these 9 lone targets making the battle a lot more intimate. Part of the reason this is important to note is because a specific strategy was come up with to deal with them.
Okay.
You see, with each guard being as strong as an S rank, Ma tanking all of them simply wasn't possible. If they were gonna take these ants on properly, then a secondary tank was needed to draw aggro from the Queen's guards.
Who that gonna be?
So, given that Cha was
Cha?
the main tank for her own guild, it made sense to set
That's so crazy that she's a tank. Like, what the hell? How is she a tank? I thought that she was glass cannon DPS.
her as the secondary tank. She would be the primary guard while Ma preoccupied the Queen.
Okay.
This led her to engage with a skill called Tremor of
Whoa.
Provocation, which as an AoE taunt, drew aggro from all the guards and the Queen.
Yo, she's taunting like
Ma
iron?
would then use his own battle cry of Provocation, which, unlike Cha's skill, was a single target taunt drawing attention from only the Queen.
Lame. Kinda weak, man. You don't got AoE taunts? Only one taunt?
So, with the guards and Queen now split, all Ma had to do was endure. He simply stood tall and prayed his efforts were enough to protect both himself and his colleagues. It was at this point the cameraman would try to step up, but Min's forceful pullback was a lot stronger than he expected. To add to why Min did that, it was essentially because no one was responsible for keeping the cameraman safe other than himself.
Let's
With
go,
the boss fight
cameraman.
now well underway, not a single hunter had time to look out for him anymore. So, this was a message to which the cameraman had zero response to, but he was thrown back by just how powerful Min seemed. Though physically,
Based on the shrug there or the aura here?
he was the weakest S rank, not only did his aura completely overwhelm his own, but his strength was many levels greater as well.
Okay.
It made clear the difference between an S rank and an A rank.
That is also crazy again that the cameraman is an A rank that intentionally decided not to go on duty. People would wish that they were A rank. They would wish that they were like, you know, B rank. Even like C ranks make a lot of money. Bro's A rank and he's still saying like, nah, I'm just gonna chill.
This brings us to a scene I was pretty surprised they didn't include, since it does well to showcase the far-reaching impact of Jeju Island across the country. Meet Grandma and Grandpa, an old couple where one's interested in the raid and the other not.
Oh, isn't this like Unsuk's grandparents, the person that died with the guild raids a long time ago, like Mr. Ches and Beck's friend?
Grandpa used to be highly interested in all things related to Jeju Island, but lately he found himself apart from it. The reason he was so invested before was because the day the gate first broke there was the day he lost his only son. It was an event that caused him to become a massive supporter of hunters too, since what other way was there to avenge his son than help the people he could? So, for years, Grandpa would donate lots of money to the Hunter Association,
Damn, that's a
filling
lot of
his
lore.
heart with anticipation that this raid would be the one to avenge him. He was so caught up in seeing it happen.
I want a reaction from Grandpa here then, after he witnessed Sung Jinwoo. That would have been so cool to have him like pop off like Goga and he looking at Jin with just aura farm and beat Beru.
That in the days before the raid, he couldn't even sleep. This, of course, filled him with high expectations too, but the more eager he was, the bigger the disappointment when those raids ultimately ended in failure. So, it was during the third raid that the news would say all the things that they were saying now, leading Grandpa to feel like he was betrayed since it all turned out to be a lie. The reporters always said how the raid was going to work this time, but with each attempt, the outcome was always the same.
L after
Eventually,
L.
Grandpa would stop talking about hunters
He
altogether,
gave up!
as he had stopped expecting the one thing he wanted most from them.
Revenge.
To him, the subjugation of the ants was a dream long gone now. It's the reason why he's so grumpy here, and it's also why he's so emotionally invested shortly after.
Damn, there's a lot of fucking lore going on with this Grandpa, man. It's so emotionally invested.
It was before he would have this change of heart, though, that Grandma would show her faith all the way through. She never gave up hope that these hunters could avenge their son. She did feel bad that such young people were seen getting injured, but she also cheered whenever they made progress. Like, with each Queensguard the team took out,
Grandma's
both
a fan.
her and the neighbors around her could all be heard
Woo!
yelling.
Everyone's
it was
watching.
a sentiment of hope shared across the entire country.
Okay.
It was when only 2 guards were left that's when Grandpa would join her, showing nothing but anticipation for the success of the hunters currently fighting.
Grandpa's a believer
Both
now.
were overcome with emotion as they reminisced of the last memory they had with their son. It was a celebration for the job he'd just secured over at Jeju Island. So, this scene may not seem like much, but what it does give is an inside view into the perspective of the everyday person. Last episode, Chairman Go was worried about the diminishing faith in the Hunter Association, and this right here was the scene to prove it. that notion that an
That's some nice characterization to show like the other people, like the masses, right, what they're up to. But I guess obviously the anime can't, provide every little detail, right? So it makes sense why they cut this stuff out.
entire nation was depending on them was really made clear. Now, for the Seoul TV station that was reporting the raid, its audience rating had reached a new viewership record of 85%. For context on
Ratings is the only thing that matters, that's right, baby.
how much that was, even if South Korea was to reach the finals of the World Cup tomorrow, no studio would even come close to that.
Wow.
Everyone was way more interested in the country about to become one of the few who've successfully cleared an S rank.
Well, I mean, sure, like listen, the World Cup, soccer, all that shit, yeah, it's pretty hype, right? But like, dude, people's lives are on the line. This is a fucking death match, man. So obviously people are gonna be way more invested watching this shit than like sports. Because again, lives are on the line.
Gate. With only America, China, Russia, and France completing one before, this Korea-Japan team was about to become the 7th to ever do so. So, given how rare of an occurrence this was, the director couldn't help but think about
Are we talking about S rank gates right now?
completing one before. This Korea-Japan team was about to become the 7th to ever do so.
Kind of fraudulent that they're adding Japan to this because they didn't really do shit other than become fodder. Kind of bullshit for every one of these people also here, because like at the end of the day, Jim was the only one that did it,
So, given how rare of an occurrence this was, the director couldn't help but think about all the money he was about to make. That's
Bro does not care about the lives lives being sacrificed and people dying. He's like, oh, the ratings, the money, baby. These people are just like in Beyblade Metal Saga when kids were like fucking dying off of a ship and they're like, no, keep the recording going on, bro. I remember that one episode, Jenga versus Kenta, on that one fucking Baystar Island arc in Metal Fury. And the yacht and the ship is like sinking and the commentator is like, whoa! Kent has unleashed the move and the ship is sinking. Will the kids get out of this one alive, folks?
when the howling screech could be heard from his feed, along with an update regarding the alarming news that the Japan teams were withdrawing. This brings us to the fight with the Queen herself, which honestly the anime did better than both.
Okay.
They added quite a lot to Cha's scenes, and the panels which the manhwa depicted beautifully were brought to life as best they probably could. I do still like to appreciate how amazing the manhwa looks though. It was after getting
Let's see the art. Yeah, obviously. The manhwa art is always goated here.
the manhwa looks though. It was after getting healed from the acid attack that Ma would activate the defense skill Advanced Fortification, enabling him to endure the Queen's attacks easily now. The rest would jump in and force the Queen into a corner, leading Beck to see that this was it for her. His instincts revealed exactly how she felt up until the screech happened. It was once the fight was over that the novel and anime would show this brief moment of celebration, but in the manhwa there was no such time for that.
Phase 2.
As soon as the Queen was dead, the Ant King would be there shortly after.
Immediately, huh?
It was right before it showed up, though, that Hunter Ma would get the call confirming the Japan team's withdrawal. Immediately, everyone began to assume this situation was futile, since if 20 S-rank hunters couldn't even hold off the ants for 30 minutes, then how could the 6 of them fend off an entire army indefinitely?
Japan betrayed
It was a bad
us!
situation turned worse when he showed up. With the Ant King's footsteps sending
Ooh,
shivers down
menacing.
their spine, the hunters present could only stare in awe at it. Cha would be the first to recognize something was incredibly wrong, since for a monster so
smell.
ominous, she couldn't sense its presence at all.
She can't
The
smell
Ant
it?
King was a being she could only sense with her eyes. This was a discreet
No smell? Like, I thought that she could smell the mana, the super powerful mana coming from the ant, was scared about it, but not at all, huh?
level of power she'd only ever felt once before, and that was from Sung himself. So, as she stared listlessly at the oppressive aura this Ant King emanated, she could only imagine fighting it was akin to facing off against Sung. It was a fearsome thought that caused her to shudder and restricted her breathing. Ma, as the leader, needed to make a quick decision here, but as logical as it was to just fight the monster, a strong sense of unease prevented him from giving the order.
Already
It was
dead.
when he finally overcame every basic instinct telling him to run that the Ant King had already gotten behind him. In a flash, it moved to the Queen without a single hunter noticing.
Wah! Wah! I can't wait for this season to end, bro. I'll talk about Soul Waving, be here ways still by now. Let's look at this guy's chat too, if I pop the shit up. His chat history. His chat history right over. I can't even show you this one right over here, bro. Holy it took an hour and a half break and we're still doing solo leveling content? Holy. Why you gotta be like this, bro? Why can't you just let people enjoy what they want? Oh no! I the thing that I want, nobody talks about it and everyone else is having fun watching Show Webwing and I feel left out, so I'm gonna hate on it. You don't have to watch. You can literally unplug and do whatever else you want to do, but you choose to get upset and sit in a stream where we obviously cover solo leveling, getting upset. What are you doing, bro? You're a victim of your own fucking mind. Go touch some grass. Go watch the shows that you want to do. Who cares if other people are enjoying stuff? You don't have to worry about that. Why does other people impact you that much? You can simply just hang around in your own bubble and talk about the shows that you want. It's that simple.
Noticing. It was Speed that confirmed this was in fact a threat unlike any they'd ever faced before. So, it didn't simply walk like how we saw in the anime, and it didn't eat the Ant Queen either.
Huh?
It instead roared so menacingly it brought everyone to their knees.
Okay.
It's not clear whether this was an attack or not, but the sheer intensity of it was enough to paralyze everyone. Only Cha remained standing,
Damn, we had a Conqueror's hockey moment. Chao's the only one that was standing? Okay.
albeit just barely. That's when the Ant King would choose to focus her, striking her on
It's
the side
over.
of the head and rendering her
Beyblade
unconscious.
time!
The rest of the fight is depicted very faithfully to the manhwa, but does differ slightly when it comes to the novel. So, as shocking as it was to see Cha removed from the fight instantly, every hunter present knew the longer they hesitated, the less likely it was for them to survive. It was a mindset that led Ma to grab the Ant King with a bear hug, restricting its movements until his opponent would sever his arms from the
That
inside.
didn't go well.
It was then Beck knew he had to intervene, because to not do so now meant Ma would have been killed right there. This forced the Ant King to switch his targets, defeating everyone until Ma would enter again. Turns out the others had been healed too, so every hunter minus Cha got to get a beatdown a second time. It was once Ma had returned for the third that finally the Ant King would clue into the existence of a healer.
So in the light novel, Ma didn't specifically say it, because in the anime, bro was like, hey, we got a healer! Guess how I'm back for the third time, baby? I got my boy Byungyu over there hidden stealth mode healing us. Oh, thank God you didn't go for the healer, huh?
You see, Min's camouflage was working perfectly. The Ant King truly had no idea where he was, but now that he knew Min was around, there were several ideas it had to work around it, one of which was to use Ma as bait. So, the Ant King decided to constantly damage him by giving him the
Damn, this is the Hulk smash scene, man. He got fucking ragdolled.
Loki treatment, but held back just enough in order to keep him alive. That way, it would look as if he was about to kill him, forcing Min to have to heal Ma over and over again.
Whoa, go back?
There were several ideas it had to work around it, one of which was to use Ma as bait.
Okay.
So, the Ant King decided to constantly damage him by giving him the Loki treatment, but held back just enough in order to keep him alive.
And then healer.
That way, it would look as if he was about to kill him, forcing Min to have to heal
Baiting.
Ma over and over again.
Trapping.
This created for a constant output of healing magic, from which the Ant King could then pinpoint Min's location. You see, small bursts made it impossible to hone in on where it was coming from, but a steady stream of magic would eventually become perceptible to anyone. This would be how the Ant King found Min, ultimately leading to his death. Eating his head then allowed it to gain Min's strength and knowledge, which is a topic I'll actually cover in an extra cut content video.
Yeah, the eating the head stuff, right? And I thought that like by Ant King eats somebody, he gets their memories, and that's why, you know, he ate the Ant Queen or some shit before. I don't know. Apparently it didn't happen in the source material, but yeah, he got penetrated here.
The way this monster became the Ant King is actually a small side topic of its own.
Okay.
Now, it was when the Ant King asked Beck where the Human King was that in the novel Beck would straight up out Goto and say he was outside. As cowardly as it was, Beck had no choice but to use Goto as a means to buy time for him and his teammates.
Yeah.
Now, considering how the outcome of Goto's fight is still inconclusive.
Beck straight up said, yo, the Human King is outside. Yo, Goto Ryuji, yo, you should get him instead.
I'll wait till next week to talk about how that went.
Okay.
If you're wondering why Goto decided to call himself the king though, you'd be surprised to know it wasn't entirely out of hubris.
What? He did this in a very selfless way? Like, he's like, oh no, you know, I need to help everyone else out, therefore I'm gonna call myself the king?
It was actually a firm belief that stemmed out of a position he planned to hold in the future.
Oh, it is out of ego then. Isn't that hubris straight up? Isn't that Goto being like, you know, I need to take this guy out because I need this on my resume to become a national level hunter, because that's the one thing that's holding me back from being recognized as a national level hunter.
Since Japan's true plans were to subjugate Korea and create an empire, Goto knew the only viable person to assume that throne was him.
Bro wants to be the shogun, man. Bro wants to be the actual shogun. Please annex all of Korea.
So when he really thought about what it was the Ant King was asking, Goto had no problem confirming he was the king. To him, he had every right to say he was.
I'm the shogun.
It was only a matter of time before such a position was solidified as truth. At least that's what he thought anyway.
And then he got instantly one shot.
But yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. Don't forget to check out the Solo Leveling
Merch
merch
drop.
and be sure to subscribe if you want to see more.
Yes, sir. You know how it goes. Thank you, Aninews, for the cut content. The stuff that was really compelling here was, well, what new stuff did we learn really? The really new stuff, I guess the cut stuff has to do with like the old couple, you know, the old couple who I don't think is Unsuk's grandparents, because their kids were killed in the first raid rather than like, you know, Unsuk being killed, you know, a couple raids later on. Other than that, everything was pretty much one for one. And that's pretty much it. Please go check out Aninews' content. Give the video a like, bang, 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 and I'll see you on the next one.